Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Thoth, the Scribe Podcast, available on all podcasting platforms and wherever you are on the broadcast net. I'm talking today to a very special person, an artist, and a very spiritual minded or leaning individual that goes against his upbringing. But we'll talk about all that. And I'll introduce you, Kyle Szpyrka.
How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I like the pronunciation. You told me about the origins of the name, and you told me how to pronounce it, and I like it. I like it a lot. It sounds vaguely Jewish, vaguely I don't know, vaguely Catholic or something more exotic. Yeah.
I
So
can tell you I haven't met anybody else with it, so it does me well.
yes, I like it. I like it. So before we'll start to diving into the kind of deep waters, can you talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm an artist, 33 years old. Graduated from the College of St. Rose, painting degree, traveled around New York City, finding my way as an artist, doing a whole bunch of different odd end jobs, from teaching in elementary schools and waiting tables, bartending, designer for a whole bunch of different things, freelance and decorating houses. And in all that time, I was constantly plucking away, even when I was bartending, just sketching people at the tables and constantly sketching subway passengers on the subway and people in the parks, and kind of connecting life with art has been like the last 10 years, and following this voice inside of me that really just knows I'm meant to be an artist. It just won't leave me alone. And being willing to follow that, and being at this cool place where I'm at now, where I feel like my career is just starting out, where I have reduced everything down to a sense of purpose, a sense of a mission with my art. I'm starting to understand what my art's asking of me. And just following that path, learning how to open up to life and trust life to guide me in how to do this thing of being an artist. It's kind of a vague, a vague path to follow in life. You go to school, they teach you, but they don't really teach you how to succeed doing it, more so than just developing your skills as an artist. So that's one of the great adventures in and of itself, is figuring it all out.
Yeah, that's a great summation. I like it, running all the running things, running a thread across your life, or your artistic life at least. So I want to take you back down memory lane and talk about your titular years as an artist. So when did that kind of obsession and passion for art develop?
Well, I can say with all honesty, I must have been like 3 when I first recognized like a real just draw to the materials themselves. Like as a little kid, I grew up with 2 brothers, and we were all very close in age. And I'm the youngest. So when they went off to school and I was left behind, I didn't have my brothers to play with, and I was just always busying myself, and I didn't like toys. I always gravitated to materials that I could create with. Specifically, I remember my father had given me an old paintbrush from his shop, his garage, just a house painting brush. And I was just running around the house pretending to paint all the walls. I used to color on the walls. If you gave me crayons, paints, markers, glitter, popsicle sticks, I was always drawn to those things. So from a very early age, I just had this inclination that said, I want to make things.
Yeah. So moving on the chronological line, when did you know that you wanted to become an artist?
Well, it's funny. I remember it feels like I didn't really even give much thought to college. Like all through middle school, I remember swearing, oh, I was fascinated with houses too. That's another fascination, was architecture and spaces, like design, interior. And I remember thinking, oh, I'll be an architect. Like, great, that sounds like a good ambition. And that was middle school. But then by the time I got to high school and I was in all my art classes, I was like, I'm just going to art school. I don't know what for. I'm going to art school. And so I started out graphic design because, of course, logic says, oh, you can get a job. And, coming from where I come from, like, you're going to college, you've got to pay those bills off, you need a job. So I went graphic for the first semester. And then the second I was in the studios, I was like, man, all I want to do is paint. All I want to do is sculpt. I just want to make art. So then I decided to switch after the first semester to art education, thinking I'll get the max amount of studio classes and be in the studios working, but I'll still get a job teaching. And then after 2 years, my sophomore year, I finished and did my student observation hours in an elementary school in my near hometown. And then I was like, nope, my heart just said, you gotta be an artist. And so I switched full time to a dual major in sculpture and painting, and that's it. So I kind of made that decision there.
Yeah, you got to burn some bridges before you start building new ones.
Yeah,
Yes.
I tried. I really did. I was like, I'm gonna try to be practical and logical and worry about the rest of my life. And then, 20-something-year-old in art school, passionate as all get out, and nope, I'm going to be an artist. I told my father that.
Yes.
He just,
Yes.
oh yeah, he was a little taken, like, oh boy, it's going to
So
be a
he
tough
comes
ride.
yeah, of course. But he comes from the corporate world, or?
No, I come from a very humble background.
No, your father.
Yeah, no, he was a mechanic and
Oh,
worked at a prison as a security guard.
oh.
My mother was a hairdresser who went on to become a teacher for elementary school. And we're from a very small town in the northeast of Connecticut. So art
Lovely. Yeah.
wasn't super present. It wasn't like living in a big city or living in the very small rural parts in the woods and farm country.
Yes. So when you look at all the nature, because you know that America is huge. I come from a tiny island in Levant in the Mediterranean, which all the world cares about. Unfortunately, for the wrong reasons, or everybody has their a kind of ends to their means. But so when you look at the natural world, when did that kind of spiritual side started to merge in synchronicity in a beautiful dance with your art? When did you know first that you were making the kind of art that you want to put out, want to exhibit? And secondly, when did you know that you were satisfied with what you were doing actually?
So the first time I can remember art taking on more of a spiritual inclination, or that merger kind of happening, was, there were brief moments of it throughout college. And there are key pieces that I did from a place of almost like therapy, like some real difficult times. I'm gay, and coming out didn't happen, where I'm from. It didn't happen until I was in college. And so there was a lot of suppressed sexuality there. And so in that process, I did a couple key pieces that really felt like a real sense of liberation, and a sense of kind of diving back into those hurts and all that anger that was there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really until I was post-grad, I was living in New York City, and had been living it up, having a blast, running all over the city, didn't know what I was doing, just there for the moment. And it wasn't until my breakup with my first real boyfriend, the first person I ever loved, and it was pretty tough for me. And I remember after that, I just felt kind of lost, and there my art was. And so I started tapping into my art at that time. And like I said, sketching a lot of the figures in life around me. And then it started really feeling like a guiding light to me. And so I knew I had to follow it.
Yeah.
And if I had any doubt, I was sitting in a cafe in Chelsea one day, and somebody I knew from my gym, who was an artist as well, was at the cafe. His name was Tiago, and he invited me to do a show.
Great name, yeah.
Yeah, he was hosting a show at his loft studios in Brooklyn, and he's like, "Oh my God!" He saw my sketches. He's like, "You should do something for the show." He's like, "A bunch of us getting together."
Does he speak like a Shakespearean character?
No, I don't remember his background specifically. I know he's, I want to say, from the Eastern Bloc somewhere. I'm not exactly sure, and I don't want to get it wrong. But yeah, he invited me,
That's
and
a big block, yeah, of course.
yeah, without even thinking, I was just like, oh my God, sure, like a chance to show. It was never on my radar, wasn't really thinking to go formal artist route. But after I started piecing together work for that show, I was like, yeah, here's my thing. This is what I do. This is what keeps calling me. And from then on, it was just like, I just kept following it, and it just kept unfolding, and the spiritual thread just kept deepening. And I could tell because, I'm an avid dreamer. I have tons of dreams every night. And the two were kind of overlapping.
I'm jealous. I haven't had a dream in a long time. For
oh my gosh.
weird reason, yeah.
Oh, I had 6 last night. The last 2 weeks have been tiring sleep.
I'm insane already. I have all those kinds of premonitions and hallucinations, and I put them down on paper. It's divine inspiration for me. Do you think, a lot of artists that I talk to, and I mentioned this part, that I have divine inspiration, and it's almost laughable to them, but it's weird because do you get those sparks of the divine? Do you get immediately struck by the muse?
I do, and it's so funny because I don't normally talk out loud about these things, because like you said, there's a stigma about, oh, you're crazy.
Yes.
Right. But literally just the other day, I was sitting outside because now, of course, I've studied for the last 10 years in spirituality and understanding a lot more of it and the connection that happens. So for me, it's a pretty regular thing. I went outside because, of course, it's the blue moon in Aquarius, and crazy shifts going on in the sky right now. So, and where I am, there's
great
a
time to go surfing. Yeah, you won't die for sure. Yeah.
Right. So there was funny enough, where I am on the full moon, the exact date, there's a hurricane, Henri, coming through.
Damn.
So I literally took the opportunity to just go sit outside by the favorite tree that I do my qigong and stuff.
Near the hurricane, yeah.
Yeah, and I sat in the elements, and I took a walk on the ocean first, and then had a meditation and just really gave it over and just said, hey, listen, I talk to nature, like life with a capital L. I like to talk to life as a living spirit that wants to move through me. And I asked, show me what it is that you want from me. What is it I'm supposed to be communicating? Because my art for the longest time was all about me. It was about me and my healing journey, and I'm just coming out the other end where now I can finally start to speak and use it to help others. And that's where I'm at. So I'm developing this language, and I'm just asking life, like, okay, what is it? What's the message here? Like, I'll be your messenger. Just tell me your message. What am I to say? And boom, instantly, the way it happens for me is I visually see diagrams of energy circuits. And they'll be
out to the third eye. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I will literally just see, it's like a whole image will just download, and I'll just see a grid map of an entire piece. And that piece will make perfect sense to me in context of life and energy, between nature, between the earth, between the cosmos, between the interconnection of all of humanity. And I'll just go, oh, whoa, cool, thank you. Okay, I'll take this and I'll go sketch it out, and I know what I got to do now. And
you got a freebie. You got a freebie from the universe.
Oh yeah, well, and that's the thing. Sometimes there'll be a train of thought, and they'll just keep coming in. And so I'll just keep working with it in a sketchbook form and go, all right, okay. And it's like, as I'm doing it, I'm also simultaneously learning so much, because sometimes things come in and I don't understand them, but I'm just like fascinated by what I saw.
Yes.
And in sketching it out and connecting with it in that way, it's like awareness and understanding just starts unfolding. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like somebody just taught me something amazing here.
Yes. So when did that path, did it coincide with your artistic ambitions at first, the spiritual part, or did it came later?
I feel like my first solo show was very early on in my career. And that show was called Messengers. And in that show, there were a lot of works of, like I told you earlier, angels coming down and whispering to these sleeping figures. And these sleeping figures were one element. The meditating figures were another element that were always in a state of ascending. And then the spirits or angels were always the third element. And there was always that kind of shift in awareness of consciousness from sleeping to meditating and ascending to this kind of like, okay, a higher octave of being. That was very present in my early works, even though I didn't understand it. I was just starting to dive into spirituality and study beyond Catholicism. And I was just awakening my awareness of energy, chakras, auras, all of that. So it all kind of happened at once, really. It's like my art, it really was propelling me through all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've mentioned before that you don't come from a very religious background or strictly religious, maybe more secular. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, I had a good foundation in Catholicism. You know, we grew up with my grandparents on my father's side. They were from Canada. And they were very Catholic, and my great nana especially.
Yeah, I didn't know they let them out.
Yeah, trust me. So yeah, they were very Catholic, and I was raised up going to church, went to Bible school a little bit, did catechism on Saturdays, enough to learn the working foundations. But then once high school came, it was kind of like, okay, take what you learn, do what you want with it, explore, don't. At least you were given a foundation in spirituality, which I'm grateful for. And for a long time, that was my reference for everything that I was studying, is I would go back and think, okay, what were all these prayers and parts of the Catholic service that the priest would say as a rote routine repetition that you never connect with, you just memorized them because you were supposed to. They start to actually take on some meaning, and you start to find pearls of wisdom in those things that seemed pretty hidden, but only through exploring all these other spiritual traditions did I start to see the wisdom that was kind of embedded in my own. And that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool experience to go through and feel a sense of gratitude for my own spiritual upbringing.
Yeah, so when did that kind of spiritual journey, spiritual seeking of the universe, seeking the divine, the higher powers, or whatever they are, or he or she, it doesn't matter. But when did that kind of journey, when was the first stone laid for that journey?
I was 25. It was, well, not quite 25. I was almost 25. This all kind of coincides around like my 25th birthday. I remember doing a self-portrait at that time, because by then I knew, I was like, okay, this is what's going on here. But it was leading up to 25, like I was 24, and my dreams were just going and going, and they were repeating dreams of being bitten by a snake and constantly trying to rip that snake off.
I had those dreams a lot.
Recurring over, and that this one period of my life, they were like almost every night, and I was so and every time I would rip it and dig my fingers in and try to rip the body from the head and get it off me. But then I started to understand it in the reference of
Kundalini. Did it go for the nether regions, or?
It was always like an arm or a leg or wherever it was. They would follow me and chase me, or I'd come across them in the woods and be like, oh, I would be totally aware in the dream too that I was like, damn, it's another one of those dreams.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to dodge it this time. And
So you're saying something about a Kundalini. Let's get back to it, which I know a little bit about, but can you explain in your own terms and your own perspective, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, well, in the context of my dreams and hindsight looking back, it was kind of this raising of the energy of awareness, right? If you think of the catechist and you think of the serpents weaving their way up to the top, and each of those intersections being one of the chakras of the body, that energy, the polarized energy of the two polar opposites, want to weave their way through your entire being
like
until
those
they reach
snakes
the crown.
Right,
until they reach the crown, and then all of a sudden they bring awakening, this awakened new energy to all those circuits. And so at the time, those dreams felt like my initiation into really diving into that journey. And I was terrified, I was scared, I was resistant. I was like, no, please, I'm gonna die. And then you get into that whole realm of, okay, this is like the dark
so
night.
you were a skeptic, essentially.
Yeah, I was always terrified, like, of everything when I was a kid. So of course something like this happens and I'm like, what does it mean? I don't know what it means. Just be scared because you don't know. And it took a while for me to really get my courage in these things. And funny enough, I used to turn to my comfort was always angels, which is why they showed up in my early work so much, because like I felt so comforted by them. Like I felt like such a connection there. And I was like, okay, I would pray to my angels and I would just feel safe. And I'd remember like the saints that my meme told me to pray to. And so I really leaned on that heavily until I started finding the courage to just open up to these new things and these new thoughts and these new experiences within.
Yeah. So did you always think that you got some kind of a divine inspiration from supernatural beings, androgynous? We have to mention also that angels don't eat or sleep, and they don't have, shall we say, gonads.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot throughout the course of the years. And with all honesty, I've never felt that I've received from another being or entity or spirit or angel. I've never felt that connection. I've always felt like I was conversing with my higher self, like my soul. I always felt like I was talking to my soul. And there was a few times where I had dreams where Jesus came to me.
Yes.
But like not Jesus in my Catholic upbringing. He was in brown robes and he was driving a school bus and he came into the water. Like,
that's not Jesus, my friend. No.
he was driving a school bus and he looked just like Jesus. He was a hippie. He was so cool. And he opened the school bus doors because I was sitting in this big ocean, but it was very shallow water. And all the people that I knew from my life in the city were way in the distance playing and laughing. And I was all alone. And Jesus opened the door and he was all happy and chill. And he's like, hey, are you ready? And he reached out to me and I literally just told him 1 second and I dove underwater to find my backpack. And I grabbed my backpack and I climbed on the school bus and then I woke up.
Apocalyptic vision. Yeah, of course. The second coming of Christ is coming on a tour bus. Yeah.
It was great. I mean, after that, I felt like, okay, this is safe. Like this is I'm meant to be going on this journey here. So that was the only real connection I ever had to anything other than what felt like talking to my own soul. Or past loved ones. I had a lot of dreams with my meme and my great meme because they were very important to me. And at difficult times I would pray to them and they'd come to me in dreams and talk to me, comfort me.
Yeah. So all kidding aside about Jesus and the second coming, he will come on a white donkey or a white ass, as I like to call it, because that's the correct biological term, ass, to call that beast. But so when you started that journey, that spiritual journey that you wanted to express with your art, the imprinting of spirituality is embedded inside your art or inside the brush or whatever you want to call it, whatever tool you're using. So when did you begin? Where did you start? Did you go to the library? Did you talk to people? Did you take courses? How did you go about it?
Well, it's funny. I never really sought anything out, which is crazy because life just kept bringing me stuff.
Oh,
I would talk openly.
yeah, all the freebies, yeah, they're
Right,
yours.
I would talk very openly about like what I'm into, and so the person Alex, who is now my boyfriend, we've been together for 8 years. I had just met him around this time. Like I must have met him at like 24 when I was 24. I'm 33 now. And at like 24, I would talk to him about all of this, and he would just start giving me books and supplying me with
Yeah,
books. And I started reading off on other subjects. And they were things from like Don Miguel Ruiz, from the
yeah,
Toltec tradition and stuff like that. And I had already been a little bit into Deepak Chopra and seeing some
yeah,
of his stuff, and also reading up on other books on Kundalini because I had started yoga at the gym for kind of calming myself out in life. So all these little pieces just kind of kept coming into me without me going out seeking. And then as they did, I just started diving in. Like I just couldn't get enough of it, so I just kept reading and reading, and then I started going to Barnes and Noble and buying books on the subjects
yes.
that would call to me. And through that journey I
You
ended up
know you're
exploring
a
so much.
serious, yeah, you're a serious reader when you go to Barnes and Nobles, of course.
Oh,
No,
that was
I'm
my
kidding, I'm
favorite
kidding.
spot. That was before I became at all tech savvy. I didn't have Instagram or an iPhone or anything, and I still would just go to Barnes and Noble at Union Square, grab a stack of books and sit in the coffee shop, and I'd thumb through books and sketch people.
Nice, nice. So
Uh,
you were saying about being serious.
oh, yeah, getting serious about the spirituality in my work. Yeah, so it was around that time that it just, after that first show, it just kept coming. I went actually out to LA, ran away for one brief stint there because I had an opportunity to do a mural in downtown. And my life in
Oh,
New York, I was like
nice.
trying so hard to sever ties with my past life and what I'd been up until then and start fresh. So my brother lived in LA, so I went out there and had no job, no money, like only could afford my plane ticket there, sublet my
Yes.
apartment out to a friend
You
and
are a starving artist, yeah, of course.
told everyone I don't know if I'm coming back or when I'm coming back. All I can
Yes,
tell you is I'm going and we'll figure it out.
yes,
So when I was out there, funny enough, I ended up having a couple cool experiences of working on the mural every day was great. Getting to see a little bit of LA. There was some other things going on in my life that were possible outlets for me, like modeling and stuff. Had some opportunities out there that I followed up on. But ultimately, I got this big sensation when I was out there, an aha moment, if you will, of, oh my God, this is what I want to do, but I need to go back to New York where I belong and do it.
yes.
I need to be an artist. And the whole trip, I was able to manage to get enough money to get my ticket back and survive just fine with just the money from my artwork. And that really inspired me.
Yes.
And there was one key moment where I didn't have enough money to come back to New York. And I was like, okay, but my heart's telling me I need to go back. And I was like, I
Yes.
need $200. I need
I'll give
another
you a
200.
painting. Just get me on the plane. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I never practiced any of the things that I'd been reading about, like manifesting or using your energy or your heart's intent and desire. But that time I did. I sent a little prayer out and said, I need $200. I was like, life, please help me out. And I went to work that day. It was one of the last days I was working on the mural in downtown. And the guy, Danny, who I was doing it for, I was in the middle of working and he came up to me with an envelope. And I was like, oddly enough, I knew exactly what it was without even him saying a word, because something just clicked. It's like I already knew. And then he handed me an envelope and said, "This is a little extra for you because I know this has taken you a lot longer than you anticipated, and I really appreciate it." And I opened it, and it was a check for $200. And I said, "Oh my God, this stuff works." Okay.
Paid, yeah.
So that was like one of the first, like, if I wasn't committed by then, I was after that, and was like, okay, I can do this. I can go back. I can follow this path as an artist, and I can continue on this spiritual journey that I'm on with my art. So that was that was it. I went back to New York, and then ever since then, my spirituality and my studies were really at the root of well, it was all at once. It was like my work was always a way for me to work out visually in front of me all of these abstract things I was learning at the time.
Yeah, your kind of a blasé attitude is nice, and that, I think that's the thing that encourages the universe to continue to contribute to you and help you in different ways. But when you studied all those different kind of philosophies and practices and yoga, I'm studying a little bit of Buddhism right now. That's my current obsession. I have a lot of books on Buddhism and stuff like this. But what do those concepts mean to you? The different stories, the different myths, the different practices and philosophies, how do they interweave with your kind of a perspective or world view?
Well, I guess they all brought me to where I am now, with this connection to a sense of unity. You know, my work right now, I told you I'm developing this visual language based off of everything that I studied and where I'm at. And it was that underriding sense of unity that exists in the human spirit that really motivates me. That's something that I found in all of these different studies. Whether, you know, it was the meditations in Taoism and all the various ways that the Taoism, you know, meditations were connecting you with the elements, with the organs of the body, with all the planets, whether it was the Kabbalah and associating the tree of life with the planets and the different parts of the self and the realms, whether all these different things that we're all talking about the same things in different ways and following these currents of energy that extend across all of life, and learning to recognize them as they flow through you and the balance and harmony of them within. That really just kind of made me feel like super connected to a web or grid of life and energy that runs through all things. And now I feel like it's time to express that in a way that is new, that is in a language that people every day will understand. You know, if I show my parents natal charts from astrology, it's going to be like, they're not going to know what to make of it. And no matter how much I try to
They will
describe it,
disown you, yeah.
right? Even trying to describe it, it can only go so far because it's limited by their previous understandings or what have you. So the challenge for me is now how to go about sharing these in a way that can be subconsciously triggering or subconsciously being received. I'd like to think, you know, I want it to be received willingly or openly by their own volition, just receiving, to have some sort of experience of a spiritual nature. And just to not prescribe what that is, just to share what comes through me and trust what I feel, the way that I'm being asked to share it, because that part I surrender. You know, I'm not going to prescribe and say, this is my language, get to know it.
Yes.
You're going to understand how wise I am. That's not interesting to me. what's interesting to me is to be able to trust what's coming through me and observe how it is received, and trust life to guide me to becoming the best visual speaker that I can be for this message, whatever it is, you know?
Okay, so now let's talk. We talked a lot about philosophy and your kind of worldview, about a little about yourself, your amazing quotidian life in the metro and harassing the passengers. But it's better than a photographer with a DSLR with 4 lenses. That's much better. but
I have to say, I was always very discreet. I would always sit there and just like hiding, and if they made eye contact, I'd look away and just pretend I was journaling. And
yes, I did that. I did that also with a couple of people when you know, I caught people doing that to me actually, because I know.
Were you offended?
Yes. No.
Oh no.
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I have that. I have the picture the sketch he drew. It was something university, and he was a student. It doesn't matter. And we were in the same class. And I saw him like, looking up, looking down, looking up, looking down, and his hand didn't move. But he was such a great artist and technician, at least, that you remember the kind of the one-line paintings, the what's his name? I'm lost for wow, I forgot his name, but I know that Picasso did those kinds of lines. One line,
line drawing.
Yes, so he made that my portrait in that style, and I said it was beautiful actually. It was not completely realistic because he can't do it, but I discovered that he did it a couple more times, of me. But I took it as a compliment. He wouldn't let me get the other sketches. There's a limit because it's stealing already. But those are my images, so I can request whatever I want, but I didn't want that. But it was also a beautiful one of me like concentrating in class and writing something down, because I was also it's like parallel kind of universes, because I'm drawing something, and he's drawing me. So it is complete insanity. And maybe someone else is drawing us, I'm drawing the environment, he draws me drawing the environment, and someone else is drawing the environment with us in it.
Observing life.
Yes, so that's a great kind of a common thread. But I wanted to get back and talk about a little bit about your art itself. How would you characterize what you do, the types of paint that you use, the technique?
So, I mean, I recently just took a big departure from everything that I kind of was familiar with, which was very classical, oil painting, and all the techniques that I learned from school, how to be an oil painter. It took me a long time to break from that medium. And charcoal and graphite, those were my, everything you looked at in college was pretty much what I was carrying forward with. And then just recently, I've started breaking away from it, and it was literally just life intervening. With the pandemic, the cost of canvas went way up, and the cost of my oil paints doubled, and the cost of pretty much everything just started going up and up and up. And I was buying like 7 36 by 48 canvases at a time for the series that I was working on. And all of a sudden, when that price went up, I was like, times it by 7, I got to find a new way of working. So I had always been fascinated by urban street art. That's always a great way for me to look at the language of the times, pop art, what's out there in the streets, what are people talking about. And so I started wanting to work in wall paint. I was like, one day these will translate into murals, hopefully, in public areas. And why not start working in the material? You're never going to do an oil paint wall mural. It's never going to dry. It's good. No. So I actually took the leap and ditched the oil paint that I had and just started working in house paint. And that's what I've been using ever since is Clark and Kensington, Benjamin Moore, all the good ones. And that actually did a great job to expand my confidence and just joy in exploring color. Because when you see a whole wall of color swatches at the hardware store, like ever since I was a kid, that used to fascinate me. I could never make up my mind on which one I wanted because I wanted them all. And now I can literally go in and custom curate my palette right there in the store, bring them home, see what resonates with the sketches. And it's been a really great departure for me.
Yeah. So can you take me through some of the themes that you depict in your paintings?
Sure. Well, just recently I was working on a series called the Unity series that is about bringing unity to the self through the 7 chakras of the body. So it was exploring one by one. I would do 7 of each piece. So I would do 7 of the base chakra, 7 of the second, 7 of the third,
Wow.
all the way up, and just letting each one be different and unique. But in the process of doing it, that was my way of really just diving deep in and exploring and clearing out and doing anything I needed to do to get myself really ready for what's next. And with the completion of that, now is the new stuff where I'm focused a lot more on, like I told you, the interconnected nature of all of life. And this idea that keeps coming through to me that we're all these conduits for energy to be anchored into the earth. That the human heart and the human soul, we're here to be these sort of lightning rods, or I'm also playing with the concept of the great.
So we are kinds of a spiritual fertilizer, shall we say?
Yeah, I'm thinking more on the lines of like a conduit or a channel that will ground.
So you were saying the pyramids. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's another little motif that I'm still trying to develop. Right now I'm working with the DNA strand, the double helix anchored around the center column of spirit as it weaves its way through the 7 chakras and following those currents from above through the cosmic realms down, in anchoring them into the earth. And also the exploration of the unique emanations from the heart center that create the mosaic of light that exists in the earth realm around us.
Yeah,
so
you have a way with words. I gotta say, you must be a poet or something.
Oh, thank you. So that's happening. And then I'm also working on developing the motif of the pyramid as a second depiction of the human incarnate. I always like to refer to them as these are incarnates. We are all souls, but I'm focused on the part where we are incarnate in the earth realm specifically, and specifically being these conduits. So the pyramid is a really great structure that is the most stable structure you could find, that weathers all the tests of time. And any amount of energy that's channeled in it can safely disperse and channel it straight down. So while I am following up on the DNA right now as a depiction of each incarnate being, I'm also teetering on creating a second bit where I could swap it out and you could just, a person could be depicted by a pyramid with a center at the core that, again, channels energy from beyond and anchors it into the core center of the earth. And then the third motif going on right now is the light grid. if you see my newer works, it's coming out now. There's one I just posted on my social media called The Grid. And basically, if the piece I did, DNA, shows the 7 chakras of the body in alignment with the dual forces weaving their way through.
Yes.
And the amino acids are the 4 elements depicted by a coded color. Earth, air, fire, water make the amino acids. It's the story of how the dual forces of life, duality creates motion, and the dual emanations create the spiral, which spirals around the center column of spirit and gathers up the 4 elements to create physical bodies for us all and all the physical world. And as that weaves its way through the chakras exist as a light grid. Chakra to chakra, being to being, we're all connecting light with light, and to the poles of the earth, to the beyond. So that grid is another theme that's been coming up, where I'm really starting to dive into depicting the grid we're all a part of and our unique individual colored emanations that radiate out from each point on that grid, and how those emanations overlap and create layer upon layer of like I said, the mosaic of light. You know, it's this collaborative mosaic created by all of our energies that we're emanating, and that together creates an entire vision of, you know, the state of humanity right now, where we're at. We could read it as one big grid or one big visual imprint and say, okay, look what we got going on. Do we like it? Is it pretty?
Do we like it? Yeah. Well, you know, whenever there's a light, there is a shadow, because there is no shadow without a light, of course. But I can understand what you're saying, and I thought about the kind of depiction in the ending of the Matrix, which I'm hoping it will be rebooted successfully and will not be scuffed and will be tarnished forever, because this will be the end if this kind of movie coming out isn't successful or doesn't make it in the box office. But that's beside the point. Just talking about the ending of the Matrix, when Neo supposedly dies, he becomes a pure light, shall we say, which I don't know how it has to do anything with the Matrix, but the movie itself is a kind of science fiction movie. The kind of religious spiritual themes are subsided in favor of the cyberkinetic and science fiction, multi-layered existence, parallel universes. It's basically a robot apocalypse. Yeah, so.
I have to admit, I never saw it, but I'm familiar with the concept. I know, right? It's terrible.
I know. I don't know. I'm tempting to shut down this conversation just so you can watch it right now.
So there are so many movies. My boyfriend is a sci-fi fanatic and loves everything Star Trek, Star Wars, The Matrix, all of that. I've never seen
any goddamn nerd.
I've never seen any of that. And the worst part is that he gets so frustrated because everything that I study and learn and all the concepts that I love playing with, he's like, oh my God, why don't you love sci-fi? This is everything they discuss. And I'm like, well, I guess it's just the manner that you described, going to that cyberkinetic, that sort of, science fiction. I'm literally so right there with all of it. Like, I get it. I'm open to it. I believe, I trust it all. I just find a different way to express it,
Yeah. And I appreciate it. And I like you less as a person, but I have no, no, I'm kidding. But just getting back to spirituality and philosophies and different practices and the mantras and the meditations and the weave, the kind of, the grid of the world, the pyre of creation, or the air that we're all breathing. Can can you speak to the power of myth making? And when I say myth making, I mean the craft of art. I mean artists making art for themselves, for the universe, for whoever, for their dogs, their cats, their neighbors, their mom. It doesn't matter. Just the idea, the power of myth making, and what is its purpose? What is the purpose of art, and why do we need to make it? Why, and why is art so impactful?
That's such a good question, because I have such a love for all the arts, writing and music and everything that you could think of. If it calls to you, I always say dive into your creativity, that creative energy. And for me, I really do believe there's medicine there, that there is healing in expressing that creative energy that moves through us, and that on the flip side, when we suppress that creative energy that moves through us, we experience blockages in a myriad of forms. At least it's been my experience and what all my studies kind of point to. And I trust that we all express creativity in very different ways. If we were to dive a little bit into a subject of like karma, our karma is different. Everybody's karma is different, and it's based on every bit of their own experiences, where they've been, their beliefs, yada, yada. But we all have it, and we're all working through it. And our creative expressions that call to us are perfectly tailored to the lives that we're living. And mine happens to be in art. And so I feel like me expressing what moves through me uniquely, why else be here? Like, what else could I possibly be here for if not this, And so I feel like putting forward that into the world, I could look at it from one lens and say, oh, great. Like from a shamanistic, like art is being an artist is being a shaman. We're sending out this healing into the world. And I could also look at it and say, well, I also believe that like an interconnected system, as one part heals, we all experience the healing and feel the effects of that healing. So even if the only one that heals from putting this art out is me, that healed self is going to radiate even greater and greater light for the rest of the grid anyway. So really, is there ever a reason not to express your creativity, Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. We have a lot of subject to delve into, and I think maybe next time we'll choose a specific subject to riff on for an hour or so, if you're willing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. This has been a Kundalini Supreme Chakra, karma-filled light grid conversation. And
I love it.
Love every bit of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Guy.